Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and I'm back today to do another video. Today I'm going to be doing my October TBR talk, which I really enjoyed having a kind of more set list of books to read during September. So I think I'm going to start making this a regular thing and just hope that this kind of larger list will help motivate me to read and also provide me with some options when I'm looking for what to read next. Additionally, I've actually decided that this month I'm going to try structuring my TBR even more so. So the order in which I will be discussing these books in this video is the order that I plan to read them in. Granted, I do read several books at one time. I usually try to have at least one ebook, my long-term reading projects, and another book on the go at the same time, sometimes even two other physical books. So I may be reading some of these around the same time or overlapping with one another, but in general I'm going to be following the kind of order in which I've put them in this TBR. So the first of those is an ebook, and it is Leave the World Behind by Wherein I. This one I discussed in my most anticipated releases video for the fall, which I'll put a link to up in the cards above. That is an early e-copy that I got through Netgalley from Echo, which is an imprint of HarperCollins that I really like. And this one is described as kind of a get-outy social commentary thriller about a white family that's vacationing outside of New York when the black owners of the house they're vacationing in come to the house and say that there's been a blackout in New York City. And there's a lot of kind of mystery, who's telling the truth, questions unanswered, etc. that I think will be really exciting and great for the kind of spooky season of October. And this one comes out on the 6th of October if you're interested in reading it yourself. Then the next book I have is Cantoras by Carolina de Robertis, which I talked about in my September book haul, which I'll also put a link to up in the cards above. And this is a literary historical fiction novel that I'm reading in honor of Latinx Heritage Month. As I said in my September book haul, I am hoping to get into more South American fiction, as that is somewhere in kind of my global reading that I definitely think is lacking. So I thought I would pick up a book by a South American author for Latinx Heritage Month, which continues on through October 15th. So I'm definitely hoping to get to this one, and this should be the first one that I read during October, so I may actually start this one even before October, as it is the 26th of September right now when I'm filming this, and I am pretty far along in my last September reads. And this, as I said, is a literary historical fiction novel set in Uruguay during the 1970s that follows 5 queer women over the course of 35 years in Uruguay as they kind of come together and break apart over the course of those several years. So super excited about this one, sounds right up my alley. Then the next one is my October pick for my African Women Writers Project, which is Out of Darkness, Shining Light by Patina Gappa. This is another literary historical fiction novel that is set in the 1870s and follows the true story of the African men and women who carried Dr. David Livingstone's body out of Africa. In case you are unaware of who Dr. David Livingstone is, he is kind of considered within colonial history as the person that then opened up the interior of Africa, aside from the kind of western coast of Africa, to colonialism. So obviously a very integral figure for how history played out, and I'm super intrigued to read this post-colonial examination of his story through a Zimbabwean writer. So super excited about this one. We'll definitely be reviewing this later in the month on my channel. Then the next 2 books are also ebooks that I'm planning to read this month, both of which I have received through Netgalley that I talked about in that anticipated releases video, and both of these are actually coming out on the 13th of October, so we'll be getting to them in the first half of the month as well. So the first of which is Brave New Home by Diana Lind. This is a nonfiction book that's discussing recent trends in the urban planning architectural world regarding housing in America, exploring communal housing and I believe subsidized housing as well. So super excited about this one, definitely one that is up my alley, and this is out from Bold Type Books, as I said, on October 13th. And then we also have on October 13th The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk, which is a queer fantasy novel about a young sorceress named Beatrice who must keep her powers hidden because of the kind of political machinations of this world. This one is out from Airborne, and I believe will also count towards the Black-Oween-Athon, which is being hosted by Locked Booktition, I believe is how you'd say her name. I don't believe she's on BookTube, but you could find her on Instagram and Twitter, I believe. And I actually heard about the Black-Oween-Athon from Ashley at Bookish Realm, who I'll put a link to down in the description box below. If you're not following Ashley, you definitely should be, as she reads a ton of books and she's she's a librarian and she has the world's cutest baby and just an awesome person all around, it would seem. So hoping to complete this one for the Black-Oween-Athon. I'm not entirely sure of the prompts, but I believe it's a readathon that's running through the entirety of October, encouraging people to read Black authors who write more genre fiction-y books as opposed to books written by Black authors that are digging into kind of very intense thematic themes of like race and racism in America, which is obviously important, but it's also important to read books by Black authors just about other topics that are more lighthearted than that. So super excited about the Midnight Bargain for this reason. And also, literally just now, I realized that Wherein I, who wrote Leave the World Behind, I believe is also Black, so this one will also count towards the Black-Oween-Athon. Then moving to another Black author, although I don't know if this one, because it's not really genre fiction, would count towards the Black-Oween-Athon. We have Luster by Raven Leilani. This is going to be my virtual book club's pick for September, October. I do a virtual book club with two of my best friends from college, and we love ourselves some millennial fiction. I especially love it. It's kind of my bread and butter favorite thing to read about is young people in their 20s trying to figure out how they want the rest of their life to look like, as that is deeply relatable to me. So in this one we follow 23-year-old Edie, who works in a publishing house and is very sex positive, to put it lightly, and I believe she gets kind of entangled in some very tumultuous and like emotionally fraught situations regarding an older married man and I believe his wife. So very intrigued about this one. It is teeny tiny, as are many of the books that I'm hoping to read this month, which may be in part why my TBR is a bit longer than usual, as most of them are in the like 250-300 page range. Then the next three on my TBR are all kind of spookier gothic reads that have been sitting on my physical TBR for ages and ages, and I need to either just read them or get rid of them because I'm not sure if I don't read them this month when I will ever read them. So the first of which is one that I'm actually really excited about and just have never gotten around to for some reason, which is Gingerbread by Helen Oyeyemi. I've wanted to read Oyeyemi's work for quite a while, as she seems like an author that I would really enjoy, although she seems somewhat divisive as well. But this is a literary gothic retelling of Hansel and Gretel, in that a young woman named Perdita is attempting to uncover her mother's childhood, as her mother, when Perdita was a child, made her this gingerbread that was amazingly good and also just had a very kind of odd sounding childhood growing up in a country named Druestrana that Perdita has discovered does not seem to exist. So there's some kind of intriguing elements of this one, definitely some kind of creepy, spooky things happening, and I am super excited about it. Hansel and Gretel is one of the creepiest fairy tales out there in my opinion, and this one I believe will also count towards Black-Oween-Athon, so super excited about this one. Then the next one on my TBR is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, which I also put, I believe, on my September TBR and didn't get to it, but this is a pretty beloved book here on BookTube, and I believe follows a very reclusive author who invites a young journalist to come to her house and like tell the author's life story, and weird stuff starts happening. I believe they're connected in some weird like coincidence but not quite coincidence type of ways. So I'm super excited about this one. We'll definitely be getting to it this month, and I'm hoping it'll go by pretty quickly. It's kind of long, but I think given what I know about it, it should read fairly quickly. Then the last of this little series of books that have been on my TBR for a super long time, we have Fingersmith by Sarah Waters, which I'm a little frightened of because as I enjoyed my first Sarah Waters book, which was The Paying Guest, it was a bit of a slog to get through at times. Like sometimes it moved really quickly and other times it literally moved at a snail's pace. However, this seems to be the favorite on BookTube of Sarah Waters' books, so I'm hoping it may have less of that issue that The Paying Guest had, but it is just like absolutely giant. So we'll see. I'm going to try my best to read as much of this in October as I can. And I don't know a ton about the specifics of this one, but I do know in general that Sarah Waters writes historical fiction that are literary mysteries that have lesbians in them. I also think I'm going to count this one towards Victober, which is a readathon that happens here on BookTube that encourages people to read Victorian reads during October. I'm not sure if they have a prompt this year. I honestly have not looked into the prompts whatsoever about reading a contemporary novel that is set in Victorian times, but this one I believe is set during the Victorian period in England. So I'm excited about this one, hoping to get to this one this month. Then, since those three books have been on my TBR for such a long time, I made a kind of mental deal with myself that if I finish those three books and I still have time left during the month, I will treat myself to the next 3 books on my list. However, I need to get through those books or decide to properly DNF them, because otherwise if I buy these 3 books, I will just read them and then forget about those ones. So that's the kind of little treat for finishing those books that I've given myself. So these next 3 I may or may not get to, just depending on how my reading shapes up this coming month. So the first of those is Dead Voices by Katherine Arden. I read and really enjoyed Small Spaces, which is the first in this middle grade horror series, last October, and as I said, really enjoyed it. It was super spooky. I'm not a big horror reader really whatsoever. I get scared incredibly easily, so reading a horror novel written for literal children I thought would be appropriate. And I was freaked out by this one for sure, but definitely not so freaked out that I like couldn't sleep or anything like that. So I want to continue on in the series, and I thought October would be a great time to do that. So this is a middle grade horror series that follows our main character Ollie and her 2 friends that she begins a friendship with in the first novel, and each of these is going to be set in a different season, so I'm not sure if I will continue to read these around October or if I will spread them out into the different seasons. But since this one is set in winter, it felt appropriate enough to try to read it in October. And I don't know too much about this one, except that I believe it's kind of a haunted hotel situation. I'm excited about it. Should be pretty fun. Then the next book that I'll be treating myself to is a very busy book here on BookTube right now, and that's When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is Alyssa Cole's debut into thriller horror. She previously wrote romance that I've really enjoyed several of her romances, so I'm intrigued to see kind of what she does with the thriller horror genre. This one is a gentrification thriller, so again, something that's very up my alley. It sounds super interesting. It's about white people starting to buy houses in a neighborhood in Brooklyn, and they all seem associated with a particular pharmaceutical company, I believe. So super intrigued about this one. Sounds really good. I'm hoping to be able to get to it this month. And the last of the books that I'm hoping to treat myself to is Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. This one I also talked about in that anticipated releases video. So this one is a historical novella, I believe set in the 1930s, with a lot of speculative horror elements. I think there's a lot of kind of turning Lovecraftian horror on its head in this one, about a woman who is attempting to stop the KKK from bringing actual hell on Earth. So super into that idea. Sounds really great for a kind of Halloween-y read. So I'm hoping to get to this one as well during this month. Finally, I then just have 3 other books that if I somehow manage to get through all the rest of those 12 books, I will turn to these 3 as options, although I highly doubt that. So I think these ones will have to be pushed probably to later this year or in 2021, which is crazy to say that, but we only have 3 months left, people. Truly insane. So the first of those books is one that I would love to pick up for Victober, which is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I have not read a ton of classics in my life. I'm not really a fan of classics. I never took any college level English classes, so classics and I just never really crossed paths all that frequently. But this is one classic that I am intrigued to read, and it was written during the Victorian period. I did have to look that up because I don't really know that much about any famous classic authors, but I'm sure everyone on BookTube and their mother probably knows what Jane Eyre is about. But it's about a young governess who goes to live in a house, and the widower that she is governing for. Is that the proper way to say what a governess does? I'm not sure. I'm gonna just leave it in here. But the widower's wife had some mysterious stuff happening with her. I do know the twist in this one, as we talked about it in a colonial history class that I took, but I'm still intrigued to read it, as I do think Charlotte Bronte and the Bronte sisters in general would be classic authors that I may enjoy. So excited about this one. One of my best friends who was an English major in college, this is one of her favorite classics. She's a big Jane Eyre stan, so excited to read this at some point, potentially this month, potentially several years from now. Who knows? Then the other 2 books are both books that were on my like chopping block / 5-star prediction video, which I made back in June, and I said in that video that I was hoping to have that selection of books finished by the end of October. Not quite sure that will happen. There are 2 of the chopping block books that are on my October TBR, but I think I'm going to extend the deadline on that probably until the end of the year, because these 2 5-star predictions are ones I do want to get to, but I'm just not sure I will get to them in October. And then in November, I am planning on focusing my reading on nonfiction, primarily for Nonfiction November. So these are 2 that I'm hoping to get to this month, but potentially may not get to them until December. The first of which I also talked about in my September TBR, and I didn't read it in September, and this one is Wherein by Afia Atakora. This is a literary historical fiction novel set immediately before the Civil War and afterwards. I've talked about this one several times on my channel. Really excited to read it. Gonna be honest though, I don't think I'll get to it this month because I have a lot of other things going on, but I am really excited to read this one. Additionally, the other 5-star prediction was Writers and Lovers by Lily King, which is another kind of coming of age story, except this one takes place in the 90s and follows our main character named Casey, as she, I believe, gets involved with or kind of develops romantic interest in 2 different men that would lead her down 2 very different paths in life. So I am super intrigued about this one, although I do know that Lindsay from Lindsay's Bookish Life didn't really enjoy this one that much. So I'm going in with trepidation, but I do feel like this will hit a lot of my personal boxes. So yeah, excited about this one, but again, probably will not get to it this month if we're really being honest with one another. So those are all of the 15 books that I'm hopefully going to get to this October. Let me know down in the comment section below if any of these books sound particularly interesting to you, or ones that you're also hoping to get to in October, or ones that you particularly recommend for this spooky season, as it were. Additionally, if you found my channel through this video, I'd love to have you stick around and subscribe. I hope you're having a great rest of your day whenever you watch this, and I will talk to you next time.